My guest today is Denice Dixon, a former public school special education teacher and founder of TREAD Academy, a K 12 microschool serving both neurodivergent and neurotypical students in Atlanta. Denise started her entrepreneurial journey in 2018 when she opened a tutoring center that quickly evolved into a microschool, which she launched a year later in 2019. She just finished off another year, a successful year running her program with 25 students, but is expanding enrollment to 40 students for this coming fall because demand is so high for what she's offering. Denice Dixon, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. We had the chance to meet in person recently at the National Hybrid Schools Project Conference and was able to hear a little bit about TREAD Academy. And I'd love to hear more and have you share your founder story with all of us. Let's start, if we could, Denise, with a little bit of your background of what made you interested in getting into education to begin with, and how did you find your way to be a public school teacher?
Okay. So education has always been my dream. Since I was a little girl, I would play with my little Barbies and set up school and teach them things, right? I've always had a love for watching the spark happen, right? The light bulb go off when, you teach somebody and they learn it. And it's like that moment. Since I was small, that's always stuck with me. So I've never had a desire to do anything else. But to teach, that's always been my life goal. I was going to be a teacher, then I was going to be a principal, and then I was going to be a superintendent, and I was going to be a professor. Like I had all these big dreams in public education. So, when I applied to colleges, I applied to one college because that was the college I wanted to go to. They had what I considered the best education program, and I wanted to get into that one. And I did. So if I didn't get in, I didn't have a backup plan.
Yeah, and so then what happened next after you graduated? Where did you teach to begin with? Kind of what was your teaching journey?
So after I graduated, so I'm in the Air Force Reserves. I'm in the military part-time. So right after graduation, I got deployed. And so I was deployed for 7 months, and then I came back. My mom had moved to Georgia, so I came back down to Georgia. I had no intentions of staying in Georgia at all. This was supposed to be like a temporary thing as I reacclimated to life back in America. And then I was going back to North Carolina because that's where I went to school. And I kind of fell in love with North Carolina. So I was going to stay there. But after a while, I said, okay, I'm going to get a job here in teaching because I would never, even though I was in the military, I never straight away, I knew I was going to, start teaching. It just didn't get to happen the year that I graduated. Um, so I came back and I applied for a couple different counties and I got a job in Atlanta Public Schools. So I started in Atlanta Public Schools and I was teaching special education. I taught interrelated as well as a MYD classroom. Um, and I loved what I was doing while I was there, but I still wasn't satisfied while I was there. So
Hmm.
I started looking for something a little bit more. And that's when I ended up going to a charter system. This particular charter system was coming into Georgia to take over the lowest performing schools in the state of Georgia, and really turn them around, right? So there was this turnaround initiative, and I wanted to be part of the turnaround initiative, right? Some great things happening. So I joined that team, and I signed a 3-year contract with them. And into year 2 is where my life shifted, right, into this non-traditional path that it has now taken, because even in that turnaround initiative that I thought was going to save the children, save the next generation, right? All of what I'm for, it wasn't happening and it was very disappointing. So I had to figure out something else to do.
And why? What was happening? What was the disconnect between the vision of transformation and the reality?
The reality is it was all about numbers. It was all about the facade of we need to make it look like all these things are happening that we said was happening. But the truth of the matter is this wasn't a 3-year plan. This is more of like a 10-year plan because you're taking some of the lowest performing schools in the state of Georgia, right? And you're taking students from low socioeconomic backgrounds and you're trying to work a miracle in a year, and it's not possible, right? But you promised all these things, and so now you have to put it out there as if it's happening, and it wasn't happening. They weren't taking care of students and they weren't taking care of teachers. My personal story behind it is, and I write about it in the book that I just wrote, this particular situation is what I consider changed my life. So I had a student so I was teaching interrelated at the time. So I had small groups that would come to my classroom in my K-5 school. And so I had a first grader who was one of my students, but on this particular day, I was not serving him. I was serving a different group of students, but he came to the classroom and he brought a gun to the classroom. He pulled it out his book bag. Not to harm anyone. It was more of a show and tell, not in a good way, but it was a show and tell, and he was doing it for attention, right? Like he academically, he was suffering, social emotionally, he was suffering. And I feel like he was not being heard. We were not hearing him. And this was his outlet. Well, I'm going to get their attention today, right? And so this whole scene happens, right? I'm chasing him through the hallway. I'm the only teacher that knows that this is going on in my small group of kids. So I'm chasing him through the hallway and everybody's like, what is happening? With this student and this teacher. And so, the whole story plays a long story, but the whole story plays out. And, we were able to safely get him to the office without an incident happening, right? And this is around the time that, all these school shootings are just popping up. And so my mind is rushing with everything that this could possibly turn into, right? And so me leaving the public school system was not about the child or the situation, right? Like I told you, I'm in the military. I feel like I was perfectly trained and mentally able to handle the situation. It was the aftermath of, going to the administration, how they handled the situation. It was more of a, okay, well, let's suspend, and I don't remember the exact days and things like that, but let's suspend them for a couple of days and let's just bring them back, right? At no point in time did we address at the core what was going on with this child, right? And as I continually try to verbalize that, it's like it's being dismissed, right? We can't allow this to hit the news, right? Because it's going to change the facade, this picture that we put on that we're doing a great job and the children are doing amazing, right? So we can't have any negativity behind the work that we're doing. So it became more about, what does our work look like to the public than how we are truly serving students, right? So that child gets to go home for a couple of days and he comes back and we're just teaching him just like another day, like nothing ever happened, right? This was a time for us to intervene, not just on an academic level, but a social emotional level. This is a time for us to now support as a village that those parents and that family, all of that was pushed to the side, right? So there's the student aspect of what happened, and then there was the teacher aspect of what happened. And not to say that I needed the school to console me, right? But no one asked, how was I doing? No one asked, how did that affect you? It was thank you, and we're back to go back to class. We got to keep teaching, right? We're back to another day. It took over a week for my principal to sit down and even address the situation with me outside of what happened in the office when we did the suspension. They could not, because the way that I was so frustrated at the time, and it just so happened that I got called to military duty like 2 weeks after this happened. Maybe they needed me to go on orders, and it was like all the perfect timing, because if I did not come out of the school within those couple of weeks, I probably would have quit, in the middle of the school year. And that's not what the students needed, right? So I ended up having to actually go on military leave, and then I came back and finished the school year out. But because of how they were handling everything, I truly believe that in order for students to learn, right, in order for as adults in our profession to be effective, you have to meet people on the human level, right, on that social emotional level. And when you just forget about that and we just come and we just try to complete this task and this mission, that we're going to get nowhere, right? So because they did not address the student, because they did not address me, and it was more of a situation now let's get past it, there was going to be no learning here. No lesson came out of this. It was just a thing that happened. Now we had to move on. And so I personally could not deal with that. I knew that we needed to be able to address students on another level.
And Denice, you say you talk about this at length in the book that you recently published. Can you share the title of your book?
Absolutely. It's called Navigating Education's Uncharted Territory. And the subtitle is A Move from Transactional to Transformational Learning.
Transactional to transformational. Just another kind of question about your reflections in the conventional system before we move into your entrepreneurial journey. when you reflect on that experience in this particular charter school you were in, do you think that there were things that the school could have done even within the constraints of the system that could have addressed your needs and the students' needs, and that they were just not addressed? Like, was
Absolutely.
it possible even within those constraints, which we know schools have all the time?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I absolutely think there could have been. We actually had a really good, because there's some things that I can't take away from what they were trying to do. I think they had a very good counseling team, right? They had a very good parent liaison and advocacy team, right? There were some things they were trying to put in place. But for this particular situation, because of the heightened right sense of it was very like touch and go. I felt like if we do this, it may get out. It may get out
Mm,
to the other parents. It may get out to the neighborhood. Now we're on the right. It was all about how do we keep this out of the public eye. So because of that, the things that they did have in place, they weren't
they
utilizing them
didn't use.
correctly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Okay, so you went on military leave, you came back, you finished up the school year. What happened next?
So when I came back, I put in my notice that I was not returning, and they thought that it was beneficial to let me know that if I didn't return, I had to give back a portion of the bonus that they gave me. And I was like, y'all can have all of it. Like the money is not going to keep me here, right? I need to serve children, and y'all are not doing that effectively. So I packed up my things on that last day, and it was almost, surreal because, usually you pack up and you just put things in the corner until you come back next year and you do it all over again. You set back up, but all my things went into my car. But when I left for military duty, well, the day it happened, the day the situation happened, I went home and I told my husband, I said, I'm going to quit and I'm going to open a tutoring center. And
The day the incident happened with
the
the
day the,
student?
the day the
Was that
incident.
the first time you were thinking about this, or had this been
This was
percolating?
it was the first time. It was so I
Wow.
will say I was doing tutoring after school during this, for the past 2 years after before that incident. I was maybe a year and a half. I was doing tutoring. So background story is dyslexia is my background. When I was working at Atlanta Public School, I was able to go and get a dyslexia training, that week-long training. And I came back and I was using it with my MYD students. And I was like, wow, this program is working. It's amazing. Some of my students were actually reading, even though it was CBC words, some of them were like nonverbal and they were, working to get some of these words out. So I was like, this is a program that really works. But I didn't feel truly equipped to use the program because in a week, this is so dense, right? That in a week, I was like, I don't know what else to do with this. So I paid for my own training. I went to the skank school in Atlanta, and I paid for my own training to get a higher level of Orton Gillingham trained. And when I left that program, I was like, this program is phenomenal, right? So reading became my thing, teaching students how to read, whether they had dyslexia or not. I think that Orton Gillingham is a great program. I still use it now in my micro school. So I started doing tutoring with it because I truly believed in, the way the program is, that multisensory piece of it. And so not that I had been thinking about doing a tutoring center ever, like I still had aspirations to, stay in the public school and do all these great things. But that particular day, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I went home and I said, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna start a tutoring center. And I didn't know what he was going to say. I was like, I'm just going to throw this out there. But he's been very supportive from day one, all the way up to now. And I know he will continue to be. My husband's very supportive of what I have going on. So that's the background of, how I just said, okay, I'm gonna start a tutoring center. And so when I decided to put in my resignation, I just started building, what is that going to look like? Do I need a space? Am I going to students? And so I started trying to put all the pieces together. And slowly but surely it started to come together.
So that was 2018 then that you launched the tutoring center. What did you decide to do? Did you decide to have a location? I guess what was that initial year like?
So initially, I was not going to have a location. Initially, I was going to just, go to students' homes. But one of the students that was currently tutoring and I was going to their home, they said, "Hey, I know a space that's available close to our pediatrician's office. You should check it out." And they were so they were one of the first parents that I had when I started the micro school. So she was very supportive of what I was doing. She was like, "You should go check this space out." So I did. I went, and it was in a very convenient location. It's still where we are today. And so, I talked to
Wow.
the owners of the building, which is the doctors that own the pediatrician's office. They own the building. So I talked to them and they, really loved what I was trying to do, right? They saw the mission and vision and they was like, we will work with you. The office manager, they're like, we will work with you. What do you need? So I started small, just like a small space in the building. And every year we get a little bit more space in the building as we grow. And so we are still here. Next year, I'm actually opening a second location, not like a whole second location, but my middle and high school students will be down the street in another building, because we've outgrown this space. So this will just be like my lower campus, and then I'll have my upper campus down the street. But I won't give up this space because I started here. It works for us, and the owners are very supportive of what we're doing, in Atlanta, with rent, when you're trying to find a space, it's sky high. So, I appreciate what they have going on here.
So, Denice, I've heard from other founders who've taken a similar path to you, where they start off as a conventional classroom teacher,
Mhm.
then open a tutoring company, and then it quickly turns into a micro school. What was that process like for you? When did you decide you wanted to do something more than just tutoring?
So actually, it wasn't my idea to start the school. And so this is how I know I'm walking in my purpose and doing what I'm supposed to do, because things just kind of fall in line and things are presented to me and it just kind of works out this whole journey, from the beginning. And so, um the parents that I had, that I was doing tutoring, right? So the tutoring business was doing very well the first year. But I had some parents who wanted to homeschool their children. So they was like, "Hey, Miss Denise, will you homeschool our kids?" And I was like, "No, because I need to make money." Because I was still, even though I was doing the tutoring center, I was still working part-time. And so I was like, "I need money. Homeschool is not going to bring me any money." And they was like, "No, you can do it. You could do it." So they got together as like a collective, these parents, and they had some sidebar conversations that they presented to me, like, "Hey,
Wow.
this is what we think you should do." I'm like, "Okay, all right." So I started to put more thought into it. And I was like, I had to pray and I was just like, "God, is this what you want me to do?" Right? Because I can't make the next step without knowing that it's the right thing. And so I need to hear from him if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I heard from God and he said, "Yes, this is what you should be doing." Right. And putting these people in your path so that you can know the next steps. And so I said, okay. So I took some of what they were saying and I said, okay, how am I going to shape this? Like, I can't do this on my own. I need a support system. So I started to work some things out and I just had a meeting. I said, okay, I'm going to do an interest meeting and see what happens. And I had about 10 families show up, 10 to 12 families show up, for the interest meeting. But I had 7 families commit.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, we're doing this. We're going to do this in the fall. So I expanded in the building a little bit more and I started to set it up and make it look more like a school, but a non-traditional school, right? We're not going to just have a regular desk and chairs and all those type of things. We're going to make this a little different. So the first year really just started out as a homeschool group, right? Because I was like, it was just me. I was the only one teaching. I did have one of the parents who I brought on, kind of like in a para role, more of like an assistant, part-time, but I was doing most of the teaching. And so I was like, "Whew, okay, what am I going to do here?" So, we started using this time for learning curriculum, which I didn't care for that much, but I was like, this is how I'm gonna start because I don't really know where we're going with this thing. But I was very discouraged the first year that of the school because I was pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant until after I started planning on all this thing about having a school, right? And so I ended up having my baby 2 months early. So she was in the NICU. I was in the hospital for an extended stay unexpectedly. And I'm like, I'm so sick in the hospital, still worried about what's going to happen with the kids at the school, right? But I had amazing. I can never take this away from them. I had an amazing group of parents who held it down while I was out.
And this was in 2019, Denise?
In 2019.
Wow.
And so, when I got released from the hospital, I was home for a little bit, and then, I was like depressed from my child being in NICU,
Yeah.
the whole thing. And so I was like, I can't stay home. So I did come back, even though they was like, "You need to be at home." I'm like, "No, I'm coming in." So I decided to come in a few weeks and teach until she was released from the NICU. So then when she was released, then I stayed back home for a little bit more. Then I came on back and started teaching, and we were doing some great things. And then January hit, and I got notice that I was going to have to be called for military duty again. This was unexpected. I was going to be gone to Alabama for a month. So at least this time I had a little bit more time to plan out not being here for 4 weeks. So I got everything together. My parents were on rotation, you doing this 2 days, you're doing this day. It was a phenomenal group. They made sure that it was a well-oiled machine and everything kept moving.
And you
Um,
had a newborn.
and I had a newborn, right? So I
Wow.
had to
And a
take
new
her
business.
in a new business. I had to take her with me, right? So as
Oh, okay.
I've gone to military duty, all this talk is happening about people getting sick and this and that.
Mm.
I was like, it was almost like surreal. Like, what are y'all talking about? The world will never get shut down because of a sickness, right? So I'm still planning when we get back and all these end of school year activities, all these things are going to happen. And actually, my military class got cut short by a week because that's when the world shut down. So I came back home to no school, right? So I was like, this has been a very rough year. I don't know what a school looks like because I've been out half the school year, right? And
Right.
I'm supposed to be educating these children. Have they learned anything this year? It
Yeah.
was a lot weighing on me. And so as we were sitting at home for the pandemic, I was still teaching. We were doing, one-on-one lessons on the computer, this wide, like I was literally working all day long because I needed to work with everybody individually because everybody was on a different level. Um, and we still had to hit all the subjects. And so I really took the pandemic time to try to figure out, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm like, God, you said it's what I'm supposed to be doing, but look how this year went, right? Um, but the pandemic was a blessing. I was getting phone calls left and right about, hey, this online school thing isn't working. What can you offer? What can you offer? What can you offer? And I'm like, okay, we have to get back in the building and I got to reshape how this thing is happening because parents need something different and I got to make that happen. And I did. So we didn't start back in August. We started back in person in September. So I had some hybrid students and then some in-person students, but I said, we're just going to do a full out non-traditional learning, right? And we're just going to do it on an individualized and personalized level, whatever the child needs, that's what I'm willing to do. And that's what we've been doing since 2020.
And your enrollment continues to climb. What are you hearing from families of why they're attracted to your micro school?
So it's what I will say is the parents are a great mouthpiece for me. I don't do a lot of I mean I post things, but I don't do a lot of advertising. The parents talk to other parents and they're like, hey, this great thing is happening over here, and I get calls um based off of that. But they really love the flexibility. They love the non-traditional aspect of it, right? And so we don't do grades because I truly believe that a number and a letter doesn't is not reflective of a child, right? We work to mastery, work to competency-based levels, right? And the parents appreciate that because in public school, like, so I serve neurodiverse and neurotypical students, right? So I have some students that are gifted. Um, but they may not have been doing well in the public school system because this grade said that they weren't doing well. And that's not true about that child, right? So we do portfolios and we work based off of mastery. This portfolio shows that they have mastered this skill, not this A, B, or C, or not this 90 or 80, right? Because some children take that to heart. They take that letter and that number to heart. And now that it starts to affect them social emotionally, right? And it may start to affect them academically because they like, I can't do it, right? Mentally, I can't do it. It's like, no, you can. Let me show you. This is how you've mastered this skill. Now we're going to move on. I don't need a grade to show you that. They also love the fact that, there's not we do have structure routine because they need that for real life. But at the same time, we don't, right? Because I'm willing to, at a moment's notice, change something if it's not working. If this is not working for you, we're not doing it. It doesn't make any sense, right? I'm not following a specific scope and sequence on a specific timeline because the state said that I had to. Somebody in this district office who's never taught a child in a day of their life said they had to. I'm not doing that, right? We don't use a set curriculum because that curriculum may not work for this child, right? So
Right.
I do Georgia standards and I'm going to make sure they hit the standards in their own way, right? It may take 10 different curriculums or I might have to make something up, but I'm willing to do that. And so the parents see the sacrifice, they see the intentionality behind what we're doing and they appreciate that. I, I have to say every year I get a great group of parents. They support each other. They support the school. I have parents that come in and teach classes. I have parents that will say, "Hey, Miss Denice, you need a break. Let me take the kids outside for an hour." They are amazing. And I always tell people when people come in like tour the school, I'm like, I'm really interviewing the parent, not the child, right? Because microschooling and this whole non-traditional world, it is a mindset shift from the traditional classroom, right? And so if the parents can't get with it, it's going to be easy to pull the child, even though it may work for the child. So I need to interview the parent and see where their mindset is, because every day looks a little bit different. And I need you to be okay with that and know and trust that we know what we're doing. Because if you're not okay with that, this setting won't work for you, right? And so when I tell them that, they appreciate that, because I need to be upfront so that you don't come back to me and be like, hey, well, you're not doing this and this. Well, I told you, you got to be flexible, you know? So yeah, so that's where we are.
So are all of the students technically considered homeschoolers, or are you set up as a registered private school?
Yeah, so they're all considered homeschoolers. I am accredited with GAC through as a
Mm-hmm.
non-traditional learning center.
Yep.
But they have to be homeschool under that accreditation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So of the families you have now, and of course you have more coming next year as you grow, are most of them coming from a traditional classroom and decided at that point they wanted something else? Or do you have some families who kind of out of the gate knew that they wanted a different type of learning environment?
So I will say I have a mixture, but we did start off very heavily with the public school is not working and I need something different. The public school is not working and I need something different. Um, Especially for our neurodiverse students. They're like, the public school is not doing anything with my child, right? And if you have a mindset that this child can't learn for whatever reason, then yeah, you're not going to do anything with them, right? But every child can learn in their own way, right? Maybe not in the same day, on a different day, but they're going to learn, right? And so um I know from experience of other teachers that I work with that, they would take a student that's in special education, they're just showing up every day. They're not doing anything, right? And these parents, they still deserve for their child to be learning something. So I have that. And then, I had students who are neurotypical, and then socially the public school wasn't working for them, and they were looked at as bad. This child's bad. I had a child that was on the verge of suspension, right? And expulsion, and he is phenomenal. Like, he's phenomenal, but the school just brushed him off as a bad child. But
Yeah.
he's so smart that he became stagnant. Like, just
Mhm.
because just because you're in this certain grade, like, you have to challenge these students or they will start to act out, right? Um, but they're not willing to take that extra leap. So yeah, so I've very heavily had parents that were saying, public school is just not working for a wide variety of reasons. But then, like, I would say last year I had a lot of pre-K kindergarten level students who came in. They're
Mm.
like, not sending my child to public school. I already know that. What can you offer? And I
Wow.
appreciate that, because so my now second graders who are going to third grade, they all started with me during that pre-K kindergarten time frame. So they're the only group of kids that have consistently been with me since they started school. And they're we did end of the year testing, right? And their test scores are like through the roof, right? Because they've had that individualized, personalized learning since the beginning. And you can see the difference, right? Like, they're not operating by any means on a second grade level. They're fourth and fifth grade level. Like, I was blown away, by their test scores. But that's not to say that the ones who come to me late aren't either. They are showing, 1 and 2 year level growth in, a school year, or even less than a school year. They're showing that growth for sure. But, for a lot of them, we have those gaps to close, right? So it's a lot harder to close those gaps when you're coming in a little bit later. So I appreciate being able to see the difference of when you get a child from the beginning and they have that personalized, individualized learning, and then the ones who come in the middle, right? But we're going to serve all of them, and we're going to make sure that they get what they need.
And word is getting around because you're moving from 25 kids to 40 kids. Tell us about this growth period that you're in now, because I think for a lot of microschool founders, that's its own almost like a recreation of the startup journey, right? It's to go from one location serving a small number of students to now, in your case, two locations and a much larger group. So, what prompted you to do that, and what has that been like?
So what prompted me to do it is the space in the building. This is
Mm.
right. I just feel like we've outgrown this space to have 40 students. I cannot have 40 students in this building. So other people will come here and be like, oh, you have a lot of space. And I'm like, no, so that on top of the fact that I will have pre-K kindergarten students. I say pre-K kindergarten because most of my pre-K students are on kindergarten level, right? They're doing more than a pre-K student, but my pre-K kindergarten level in the same building, like down the hall from a 12th grader, like that's about to be like a whole adult, right? Even though I believe that students learn from each other, that is a big gap, right? And so the age appropriateness of it, I don't think is there anymore. So my older kids, they need something different. And so I believe it's more appropriate for them to have their own space, right? And I want them to have that middle school, high school experience, right? They have their own space, they get to switch classes, they're doing the things that other middle and high school students are doing. I want them to be able to have access to that. So I thought it was most appropriate to give them their own space. And so that's why we're moving up. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you're almost doubling in size. Was it just that you had so many families coming to you that you just couldn't turn
Yeah.
them away,
So
and
I
is
had
this
a wait
all
list.
new interest? I mean, I guess what's happened there to double, almost double.
Absolutely. So I had a wait list this school.
Mm,
So my max was 20. My max has always been 20. I'm like, I won't take more than 20 students because I cannot compromise our small groups, right? We don't have more than 5 or 6 students per group. And I don't have that many I call them learning facilitators. I don't have that many learning facilitators. So if I keep accepting students, I'm now compromising our mission and vision, right? So I had to put a cap on it. The only reason I got to 25 is because like the beginning of the school year, I was tired of like telling parents no, no, because they are like, I need this. This is what I need, and I'm like, okay. So I said, okay, I'll do 25. And it's only because my older students, they're a little bit more independent, right? So we can have a bigger size group with them. So I did 25, but throughout the school year, I had a wait list. And so going into next year, I was like, okay, I have parents on the wait list and I have new interests, right? Like I said, parents are telling other parents and I'm getting phone calls and I'm like, okay, Denice, how are you going to make this happen? You can't have 40 people in this building and I don't want to tell them no. I don't want them to suffer in public
mm.
school because I don't have the space, right? And so I got to figure out how to make this happen. Now, people might think I'm a little crazy. So I don't pay myself from the business. I always tell people this is my passion, not my paycheck. I still work a part-time job to make this happen because it is my life purpose to ensure that the next generation is successful and can run this world, right? They can go out and do whatever it is that their big dreams have them to do. So should I go get another building and hire another learning facilitator? I'm going to try to make that work. Over the summer, I'm in the planning stages of, okay, I got to bring somebody in. I got to, move some finances around. I got to figure this thing out because this is what the students need. Right. So we probably should all be in this one building. Right. But I just know that is not the right thing to do. So I'm going to sacrifice and do what I have to do to make it happen, to have that second building.
And are your children in the program too, or
Yeah, so
yeah?
yeah, I have just one. She's 4, so she started.
Okay,
She just
great.
did her pre-K graduation. But also I had 3 pre-K students, and they're starting next year at like a mid kindergarten level. So by the time they finish, they'll be like first grade level by the time they finish next year. But yes, she is in the program.
So that's part of, I mean, you're not taking a salary, but she's able to attend your program. So it's sort of in-kind contribution, I
Yeah.
suppose. But do you see a pathway forward for you to get a paycheck from this, for this to be a financially sustainable business so you don't have to be working a part-time job?
Yes, so yes, we are definitely working to sustainability.
Mm.
Absolutely. I have a lot of grants out there that I'm, waiting on as well. I know that with the increased enrollment, that will help with of course, because we're all tuition based. So, but the increased enrollment and working, I have some parent volunteers that's coming in next year to help take a load off of some things and stuff. So next year, I'm truly every year I say this, hey, I'm coming out the classroom. I got to run the business. I got to run the business.
Yeah.
But truly next year, I'm going to be in the classroom. It's hard because teaching is my passion. That's what I want to do, right? I got to be hands-on with the kids. I would never completely be out the classroom. But next year I'll have minimal interaction in the classroom so that I can truly run. Because I think that has been the downfall, right? I keep teaching and teaching, and it takes away from what I need to do to actually grow the business itself, right? Because even though teaching is what we do, Tread Academy is still a business, right? And I have to work the
Yeah.
business. And so sometimes the business lacks because I'm so focused on the kids. And so I'm being very intentional over the summer and next year to get things in order so that we can. I feel like we are, like, things have been working, right? And it's sustainable, but to get to a greater level of sustainability so that Tread will always be here for generations to come.
I love that.
Mhm.
So where do you see Tread Academy, say, in 5 years? What do you expect things to look like then?
In 5 years, I hope that we are around the nation. So I actually, in the book, I talk about educational reform and, my mission behind educational reform and the need to build a network. I know we have all these different networks going on, right? But truly getting the word out about what we're doing, because some people still don't understand micro schooling and this educational reform, and what are y'all doing? That's a foreign concept. Like, why would you do that? So I want people to be able to understand what we're doing and accept what we're doing. And I always try to put this disclaimer out there that I'm not against public school. Many of us, we're not against public school. It just doesn't work for everybody, and that's what I want our state and our governments to understand. We're not against it by any means. It just doesn't work for every child. So let's be accepting of these alternative settings that have now been built for these particular children, right? And so I'm trying to get that word out there and build this network. So it's in the book towards the end. I know that there are teachers out there who feel like they're in the classroom suffering, for lack of a better term, because they know that there's more that can be happening for children, but they don't know what to do. So I'm starting like a coaching side of it, micro school or teacherpreneur coaching, so that teachers who want to come out the classroom know that there's another option. And so I want, back to your original question, I want Tread to be like a model that founders can not necessarily, you don't have to have like a Tread school, right? But you have a Tread model. You can name your school whatever you want, but here's a model that I know that works, right? We've been doing it. Children are successful in it. So you don't have to recreate the wheel, right? Now, every school is going to have its own little niche and things like that, and that's perfectly acceptable. But I feel like I've failed enough in these 5 years to help somebody else. And so I want, even if Tread, this location isn't around in 10 years, I want the model to still be around.
Mm, I think that's so great. I think you're so right, Denice, that there are a lot of teachers and other prospective founders who don't want to recreate the wheel. And I think we're going to see this sort of shift from pioneers like you who created something from the ground up to sort of a next generation of education entrepreneurs who are still very much entrepreneurial. They still are taking on that personal and financial risk, but they don't necessarily want to do it all from the ground up, and they'd like a blueprint or a template to follow. And that's where these kinds of programs that you're creating and the coaching that you're offering can be really, really helpful. So if my listeners and viewers want to connect with you, find out more about Tread Academy, as well as your coaching resources and consulting work, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yes, so they can reach out to me. So two websites. The school website is www.treadeducation.com, TREAD, education.com. You can go on there, find out all about the school. You can also go to our contact us page and reach out to me. I also have www.denicedixon.com. That's DENICEDIXON .com, and that is where I talk about the book and the coaching piece of it. So you can message me there as well. And then, of course, on all social media platforms, you can reach out to me at Tread Education.
Amazing. Well, best wishes, Denise. I look forward to following your journey and seeing many more tread model programs all across the country. Thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.